Hey, so I wanted to get to some updates about this project, where I am at with it all, and why this last section has uh, taken so long to get to here. So, my laptop charger cable died, and it took a few weeks to get a replacement shipped in. And during that time, since I didn't want to type on a tablet, I just decided to let the project go, at least, until I could type again. Obviously, in those few weeks, so much has happened regarding this conversation that uh, I I've been pulling articles written about human rights violations perpetuated by ICE and other similar agencies, and I've only scratched the surface and just barely begun to do this, and I am already 62 pages behind, trying to keep up with everything that's been going on regarding this. So that's one reason why it's taken long. Another is that it almost might miss the mark if I have to wait for martial law to be technically declared, because the U.S. has militarized its police so effectively that I'm now realizing the possibility that we could live effectively under a sort of government occupation of, cities and neighborhoods that was never actually technically declared. And for this guide section, I really wanted to split it into two parts, whereas what to do while, you know, justice systems are holding things together. And as we can see, and, recently there's been some great news in terms of all the court cases the Trump administration is rapidly losing in this fight. However, we also see so much action being taken against people using their free speech to oppose oppression, not even necessarily this administration's oppression. So we are really in a fight for the right to free speech being protected in this country, and the law may not effectively hold in protecting that right. And so it may fall into our hands as civilians to protect it against our own government agencies. So, uh, another reason why it's taken a while for me to get to this section here is that I am really tired of trying to convince people of what is blatantly obvious to me, or to, people who have studied various geopolitical regions, or historians, or anybody who understands the full context of what led to the rise of the Third Reich in the 1930s. I feel like if my time is perpetually wasted trying to convince people that the reality we are living in is one that is uh, dangerously close to just falling into incredibly dark times, it seems like I'm just using energy to do something that could have been done by that person that I'm trying to convince, or anyone listening to this, right? I mean, the reality is, for basically the entire existence of ICE, the internet has existed, any of us could have, if we were curious, paid close attention to this agency that was established out of the Patriot Act, which in its very essence, and this was even understood at the time, was the concern that it is a breach of the Patriot Act itself and all the different agencies, positioned within it, is something that violates the human right of privacy. So anyone who was curious about this could have learned anything that I could possibly tell you to convince you, because I'm not giving anything anecdotal in this. I'm providing strictly what you can learn from books that you can check out from public libraries or just purchase or find at thrift stores or whatever, and the internet and the various articles and various journalists and people who've devoted their lives to, or at least a good portion of their lives, to making sure certain atrocities are prevented. So part of why it's taken me this long is just that really I want to focus on abolishing despair. And I do know that having to fight for rights and, succeeding in that fight is a huge victory toward abolishing despair. But I really want to circumvent currency, because what I realize, and what I hope is obvious, is that within capitalism, it is highly incentivized for a society to become a fascist one, because the merger of corporation and state being a governing power is something that can be incredibly beneficial to people who seek power in the form of government or in the form of that authoritarian unilateral model that is being a CEO of some major company that has a lot of influence on the lives of thousands of people. So until we can create a sustainable gift economy of universal basic goods and services, and community structures that are so strong and so well connected that commerce isn't a depending factor on whether or not the people within those communities survive, we're going to have to, unless we get to that point, we're going to have to continually, every 80 to 100 years, somewhere in the world or somewheres in the world, the inevitability of the consolidation of power within capitalism will lead to fascism somewhere. And I really think that the best strategy is to subvert these dark times with something brighter that is completely independent from the monetary system and the global economics that we currently have now. And I would much rather spend my time tackling how to abolish despair by abolishing poverty and reducing suicides and overdoses under that method than trying to argue with people who've been propagandized against their entire lives. And I guess that gets us to about where we should be for me to continue this. Sorry, this has taken so long. Oh, you know what? One more thing. I've realized that I am not in my best mental state to do my best work. It's evident in my room being way more messy than it normally is on a regular basis, and the books that I have sort of strewn throughout the place, where I'll look around, and amid the clutter there will be, a book on the people who helped Anne Frank survive, for as long as she did in the Holocaust and tried to help more people in her situation. Uh, a book about the death of money and what uh, the monetary system collapse could be and what alternatives are, as well as like gardening in terms of a book that was made for the high yield, easy to grow things. So, specifically edibles, so that someone who's never gardened before can find the highest yield most effectively. And it's kind of emblematic of where my headspace is, where I'm wanting to learn from the past, but I am understanding that there are new technologies and factors at play that haven't existed before. And I also want to be reaching for that better world that I've always known is possible, that I've been grieving my entire life because I want the world to be a safer and more fair place. Um, and okay, so I guess now that's the second to last thing. Sorry, this is terrible. I understand that a lot of people feel that they are at the mercy of what the law says or what their government does, and I am happy to be the kind of person to remind you that your self-ownership is not decided by anyone else. You own your body. You are allowed to defend it. You do not have to wait for permission for the country that you're from to believe you have self-ownership. You don't have to convince anybody that you have self-ownership. Lawmakers don't get to decide uh, whether you have citizenship or not. The fact is, you own your body, and if it comes to a point where you must use violence to protect that body or the body of any children that you are the guardian of, I am here to tell you that I wholeheartedly support it. And it isn't dependent on my approval or anyone else's approval that you have self-ownership. It is not your responsibility to cave in and surrender your body and mind to potentially be brutalized, tortured, or ended just in hopes that the courts can protect you from the illegal actions of these rogue and unlawful combatants known as ICE or HSI or DHS. So as I get to this, understand that I am my heart is sort of in the process of abandoning this project, though I'm definitely going to see it through just because I really believe that it's something important and an essential step in this fight for the liberation of all people. But now to the guide section of this essay. What to do during ICE knock and talks. Legally, ICE knocks on your door. Do not open the door. Start recording audio or video. Ask them, with the door closed and locked, if they can present a warrant. If they do not have a warrant, tell them the following: I do not answer questions. I invoke my right to remain silent. If they press you, firmly invite them to leave. State that you've been clear and you wish for your peace to be undisturbed. Say nothing more. In the scenario they leave, you let your community know that an ICE knock and talk has occurred. They are conducting them without warrants, and they will likely knock on more doors. If they claim to have a warrant, keep the door closed and ask them to slide the warrant under the door. If they do, make sure the warrant is signed by a judge. If the warrant is not signed by a judge, it is not legally valid. It also needs to have the full name of the person the warrant is for. Tell them to wait patiently as you get online to verify if the name printed is an actual judge in your city or town, or one that neighbors it. This is to validate the judge has reasonable jurisdiction. If it is not reasonable that the judge's signature and the jurisdiction are legitimate, I want you to take a photo of the printed name, the signature of the warrant, and send it to me. In fact, even if the judge's signature is completely legitimate, I want to compile a list of every fucking judge in this country who would dare sign one of these kinds of removal orders. It is evidence of their support of the violation of human rights. And when this is all over, I want to have a pile of evidence to be brought against the judges for their complicity in these crimes. So please send them to me at allanvre@proton.me. That is ALLANVRE at PROTON.me. If the warrant is not valid, tell them this warrant is not valid. I do not answer questions. I invoke my right to remain silent. If they press you, firmly invite them to leave. State that you've been clear and you wish for your peace to remain undisturbed. Say nothing more. In the event that they leave, again, let your community know that an ICE knock and talk has occurred. They are conducting them without valid warrants, and that they will likely knock on more doors. If the warrant is valid and the name on it is yours, you are under a legal obligation to obey it, but keep in mind this may not be your final removal order, and you may be able to fight it legally. You may be able to qualify for cancellation of removal, so get in touch with an immigration lawyer to see what you can do. That being said, even with the legal obligation, as we see over 170 people, or was what, over 200, sent to the El Salvadoran CICOT without due process, I honestly believe, though many courts may disagree and many lawyers might shake their head also, but at this point in time, I candidly feel that there can be no lawful arrest because there can be no faith that due process will be given to you if you accept the terms of detainment. So it's still up to you as the owner of your body and the defender of your self-ownership what to do in this circumstance. And that's a pretty brutal decision to make, and I acknowledge that, and I don't envy you. But if an agency can't be trusted to be held at the standard of law, then I really don't see a legitimate, reasonable claim that ICE, DHS, or HSI detainment as anything but unlawful. Now, in the event that ICE agents break laws in this process, we'll cover some common tactics law enforcement officers use to break laws. They fraudulently claim to have probable cause because they smell something illegal or somebody told them something or whatever. They do this because the smells can't be recorded and the anonymous tips don't ever have to be corroborated as any form of evidence. So it can't be proven that they lied to violate your Fourth Amendment right. They falsely claim that you don't need a lawyer because they're looking for criminals worse than you, and you can speak without consequence if you answer their questions. They do this to make you feel a sense of safety, so you self-incriminate. They do this to convince you to ignore your own Fifth Amendment right. In this context, ICE, not just looking for the bad ones, they believe that anyone who is undocumented are the bad ones, and they will see you and they will see any undocumented immigrant, even if they've been in the country for decades without ever committing a crime, as one of the bad ones that they are looking for. And they will use anything you say against you. It's important to note through all of this that LEOs are trained to be manipulative. They are encouraged to deceive, pretend to be friendly, or intimidate their way into finding information, contraband, or any excuse to issue citations or make arrests. In the context of ICE, when they don't have a valid warrant, they may demand that you open the door and let them in. They may try to intimidate you by saying things get worse for you if you don't comply, that you're impeding their process. You are not. They don't have a warrant, therefore they don't have a legitimate process. They may threaten that if they get a warrant, everyone will be arrested for obstructing justice. Again, exercising your rights is not an obstruction of justice. These threats are to make you feel unsafe enough that you just trust them to be kind and leave you alone afterward. If they were kind, they would respect your rights and not terrorize you with threats of violence. Just let them make these threats, keep recording, and don't say anything. Just understand that the reason they are terrifying, or they're trying to terrify you, is to get you so shaken up that you forfeit the protection of your rights just so you can feel safety again. If you do that, they will pounce on the opportunity to violate your rights. Just remember that every threat is an admission that they do not value your rights or safety. Do not open the door. Try to take deep, calming breaths. Try to maintain a clear head. Don't say anything. One reason why intimidation and coercion are so accepted within the ranks of LEOs is because, as individuals, they do not really face any legal ramifications. Even when you take the agency to court and win, the officers who broke the laws have qualified immunity. They will not lose their job for their behavior. They won't even be fined. This is because you are in litigation with an agency and not its individual actors. They may claim that they already know you're harboring an undocumented immigrant or are one yourself. This is a blatant lie. They are saying this to scare you into admitting things. If they actually had any evidence that you are undocumented or protecting someone undocumented, they would have a valid warrant. LEOs will often try to sound like they're just seeking the truth and want everybody to tell them their story. This will again be posed as a possibility that they are the good guys just trying to make the streets safer. This is false. They are providing a false sense of security for you to self-incriminate that they will use against you the moment they've heard enough. If they present this as a chance to tell your side of the story, I assure you, the chance for you to tell your side of the story is with an immigration lawyer present with you. ICE does not care about your story. They have an ideology that human beings can exist illegally. For God's sakes, they don't care about human rights at all. If they did, they wouldn't have this career. They would have done something different with their lives. This one is avoided if you don't open the door in the first place. LEOs, so please keep the fucking door closed. If they're gonna break it, make them fucking break it and record every second of it. LEOs would often place their foot between the door and the frame if someone they were questioning tried to end the conversation before the LEOs wanted it to. This act can only be done for one reason: violating your rights. If they had a legit warrant, they would have brought it. If they cared about public safety and the rule of law, they would allow someone to invoke their right to remain silent. Since they don't, they intend to force their way in and violate your Fourth Amendment and interrogate you in hopes of violating your Fifth Amendment right. This act is proof of intent to disturb your peace, harass you, endanger you, and violate your rights. These are armed men proving violent intent. This is a matter of self-defense. Do whatever you want to that foot. I don't care if you break it in the fucking door frame. I don't care if you cut it the fuck off. That officer could have de-escalated and left when you told him you were exercising your right to remain silent. It is not your responsibility to ensure the safety of people who are a present danger to you and your family. It is your discretion what you do at this point. But that moment, when an officer breaches the door that you're trying to close, it is a guarantee that the officers present fully intend to violate your rights. Often LEOs claim that cooperation or honesty will be rewarded with reduced punishments or whatever. Again, stay silent. This is manipulation. A key takeaway here is even if ICE seems polite and calm, know that the violation of rights, even when done calmly or politely, is still a violation of rights. And if they forcibly enter your home, state clearly, I do not consent to your entry. Your violation of my consent makes me feel unsafe. I ask you to de-escalate the situation by leaving my residence. If they do not respect this, at this point, I don't care what you do to them. It is to your discretion whether you want to trust in the legal system to protect you, your family members, or your neighbors, or whatever. But I think when it gets to the point that officers break into your home after you've told them to leave when they did not present a warrant, and you have told them to de-escalate by leaving and they don't, I think it is entirely reasonable to assume the worst and to make sure that your family is safe by any means necessary. And I do mean by any means. If these individuals didn't want to die, they could have behaved according to the law and not forced somebody into a situation where they didn't know if they were going to be killed or sent to a foreign gulag. This is a very dark time for someone who's been a pacifist most of their life, perhaps mostly out of privilege, and I can acknowledge that. But self-defense law exists for a reason. And we might be reaching that point. In fact, it seems to me that we're a little past it. If there's anything that you've been curious about anticipating these kinds of raids in homes, please ask that question to me. You can send it to that same email that I mentioned or to my Ranquaz Blue Sky. That is RANKUAZ. If you DM me there, I will probably see it within a day or two at the most. As I said before, I wanted this section of this essay to be the crux of it, and I planned on going way more into detail, and to be honest, I haven't added anything to it since I worked on it last, which was several weeks before my charger cable needed to be replaced. So I do want to provide the best guide possible. Oh, shit. Also, if someone you know has been taken and you know their name, there is a firsttheycamefor.com. Send them the name of the person who was detained, because this organization is attempting to catalog every single illegal deportation that ICE and DHS violates. So, but again, if you have any questions, if there's some hard truth about the situation that we're in regarding what ICE raids are looking like or whatever, ask me. I want to provide something that is reasonably helpful and, as philosophically fair as possible. I think the next time I come here, it will be what to do in the event of martial law and how to force the abolition of ICE if we cannot trust the government to do it. But hopefully it does not come to that, but we will see. Also, I'm starting to put everything on the video platform Odysee just to diversify, and in the event that my advocating of self-defense is seen as an incitement of violence, though I doubt YouTube will see it that way. But I have wanted to get off of YouTube for a while. It bothers me to see people say things like unalive instead of killed. I think it's sort of proof that censorship has won to a degree in terms of people saying G-side instead of genocide. And I understand why this is. So, these different spellings or different phrases can go sort of under the radar and not be blanket searched by, oligarchs or whatever. So I understand it. I do get it. I get that people don't want to be deplatformed or shadow banned from an easy search. But it really bothers me that we're almost not allowed to use the language of atrocity and to still have viewership. And it's not really about the views. In fact, I think if you do these euphemisms, you probably reach way more people. But it's just not something I'm willing to do. I feel very strongly that there's a real need for free speech and discussion, and I'm somebody who really feels an obligation to use my speech to articulate why the world can be a better place. And part of that is sticking to the integrity of the conversations that we have.